Okay, so this is a version 1.8 Super 8 from Low Budget, and I'm not really going to go through all the assembly, but he asked me to kind of review it and come up with any thoughts, complaints, whatever. And I'm only a few components in, and I already have a few here. The kit itself, I would not send components like this. I hope this was just for my benefit, but you don't want to put any more sticky residue on the legs of the components than was already on there. For instance, like this, I can cut that component off and still have quite a bit of clean leg to solder to, but sticker residue can cause issues. Another issue is there's a lot of through-hole stuff on here, and I've only done a couple of them, but the actual solder pads, it might be called the annular rings or whatever, they could be bigger. I happen to have a pretty fine tip and a really good soldering iron, but you know, like the old Weller that I used to use, it had a 3mm chisel tip, might have a little more issue. Since the rings are smaller, it's a little bit less surface area to touch to and transfer heat with. And there are three SOP8 chips, or SOIC, I think they're SOIC, small outline ICs. There's three of them, and they're absolutely not a problem to solder, even with my old Weller 3mm chisel, as long as you know what you're doing, you know, use flux and practice and do it right. But what I'm saying is if we're going to do these three, then why not go ahead and put a bunch of other surface mount stuff on here, you know, like that 68 picofarad cap right under the socket. That does hit the socket a little bit where it's at, or this socket anyway. And if it was a little surface mount, you know, it would just be totally out of the way probably. The sockets themselves, I'm not a big fan of dual wipe sockets. I like to use these machined sockets. You can just kind of cut these to whatever length you want. I get these like by the hundreds from China. For 1 or 2 time use, these things are awesome. You know, if you're gonna be inserting and ejecting and injecting chips a lot, these are easier to use. You know, I mean, you have to really line up the chip pins with these just right, or they'll bend, and these go in a lot smoother. But you know, I would think with this kit, you're only going to be putting chips in like once, and that's it, hopefully. Okay, no, I mean, I'm no PCB layout expert, and maybe he knows something I don't, but let's see, we have a DC in socket on the back now, which I love that, but on the top here, the pin for ground is connected to ground all the way around the board, but there is a big fat trace going from that pin over to what looks like a bypass cap here. It says DC in, it doesn't say capacitance. I don't know, I don't really understand what this is for just yet. The power switch is here, and then the diode. Is that just going to be a jumper, or what's going on there? Anyway, I don't understand why that isn't just connected straight to the ground plane right there. Am I missing something here? It's not connected there, no. I don't know, I don't get it. Maybe I'll figure it out here in a minute, but I thought that was strange. Something else I wanted to mention, I'm getting closer to done here, but the vias on this board are pretty big. And for the most part, they seem like they're solder mask covered, but I still see a little bit of copper shining through. I I don't know what service was used to make this board, but I use, well, it used to be Dorkbot, and now it's OSH Park, but they have 13 thousandths minimum drill size, so you can make some really small vias, and you can set your stop mask to cover those vias completely, and that really makes a difference, especially when somebody else is trying to put together your kit and they don't know what's a hole for a through-hole component or what's a via. Now these are dissimilar enough that you could tell if you knew what you were looking at, but you know, for a beginner, they might see a via right next to a through-hole component hole and be like, well, what's that for, you know? And even if it's not got a component outlined on it or not. But if you can use a different service and make a smaller via and cover that hole completely with solder mask, then there's no question that it's not for use for a through-hole component. Okay, I'm getting close to turning it on for the first time. One thing is the socket for the power adapter is a 2.5 mil, and almost nothing that I have was 2.5. Everything I had was 2.1, so I changed this out with a 2.1 socket so I could use just, you know, my cheap Chinese switching power supplies that I get. And I'm not using the whatever it is, the DIN 8 connector. Which he did send a plug in for. Instead, I'm just using a multi-out connector with leads going over to the connectors on the board for RGB sync. And then I got another lead over here for ground because I don't think he's got a via there for ground. Let's see. And I got collar. I don't need that board plugged in. This is a little controller port / reset and power switch interface board, which is kind of cool. And I don't have audio hooked up, so I can turn the volume down on the TV for that. What else? Clock signal. Might be having problems with the clock signal. First, let's check voltage. And where's a good spot to check it? .22 volts. Really? It's a bit high, but I think it'll work. See if I can get a hold of the clock signal here. .48 megahertz. Definitely close enough. I'm kind of curious what if I adjust trim cap 1. Kind of curious what that would do. really seem to do much to the frequency, which it didn't do much before either. I mean, on a regular Nintendo it doesn't do much either. Pretty sure the card is clean. Hey! It was a simple... It could be maybe the new cart connector had some, I don't know, oxidation on the pins or whatever, and I just needed to force the cart in and out once or twice. So I'm going to get rid of this oscilloscope. Let's see. I don't have any sound hooked up, but that's A. You can see it flashing green. So that controller port is working. So 1 and 2 controller ports seem to work fine. I really like those controller ports. I mean, that is just going in and out of there, not so nice and smooth. I have a lot of trouble with, like, you know, like clone systems and stuff not wanting to work right, or the controller ports not wanting to work very well. Okay, video and work RAM pass. Object test good. We already did this. Color test. The only thing left is sound test, and I don't have sound hooked up yet. But so far it's working. And that does have a 74HC 373. And we got the new EverDrive. Wait. Yeah. Dumbass. That was kind of crazy. Okay, seems to be working though. I think the test cart was in public domain. Yep. Yep. And I forgot, don't have the save state mappers on the EverDrive. So Power Pack, EverDrive, all seem to be working. Let's see, what's another common issue cart here? Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Seems to be working to me. And I sure don't see any jail bars, which may not actually see those until encode it to something else. It was RC Pro-Am. That one definitely showed jail bars the easiest. In the gray of the track. And I've got a little bit of interference running through here. And who knows what that could be. I mean, that could just be the way that I've got this rigged up to work temporarily. But the jail bars are not super noticeable, but they're not non-existent either. The game does seem to work too. And let's see, Castlevania 3. I really need to figure out some audio here. I've already got RC jacks on the back of it hooked up. Let's see. Wow. I'm playing with these little adjuster knobs for his volume pots right here. You can make that shit go loud quick. That might be one thing I could see leaving that out. You know, just get an idea of a good volume for it, and just put a couple resistors there. I mean, people can turn it down or turn it up on their TVs, as long as it's on par with a Nintendo. Then I don't really see needing audio adjustment right there. Well, so far everything seems to be very operational, very good. Let's see, I think if there's an adjustment for voltage, I should try to figure out where it's at and dial it back down to 5. There doesn't seem to be any adjustment right on the power module. And the only other pot is this one that says auxiliary. Not real sure what that does, but anyway. And I am using an RGB chip. This is an RP2CO3B. I'm not sure which one's out of Play Choice or Versus. But everything went together fine. There is one jumper wire and like what 3 or 4 components that had to be left out according to low budget. But other than that, I think it's pretty solid. And although I like this interface board. I'm not super keen on these header and receptacle pins up here up front. I guess it would be fine if when this goes into the poly case, that's all that's needed. But why not make them, you know, 8 or 9 pin and put the power and reset circuits through there as well. Let's see. I guess I could try to play Castlevania a little bit just to make sure. Everything looks perfect, no glitches. I think that does it for me. Okay, I was kind of trying to put this in the poly case, but I noticed on the audio, the jacks are not grounded right at the connection points. There's a trace running between all the ground pins back over to that little hole there where it's labeled negative, and then it goes, and then that V is connected to the ground plane, but also goes off to a trace all over the place. Why would you have a trace there? Just ground those. I don't get it. Is that some kind of audio voodoo for PCB layout? I don't know. I don't get it. And of course the cartridge connector has been moved. So all the work that I did previously on those flaps, which came out pretty crappy, is now useless because they don't line up anymore with the placement of the cart connector now. But I can see where this would just pop right through the top cover. So what he really needs to do is come up with some kind of template that you can lay on top here and be able to cut out the hole for the cartridge and the controller ports and power and reset and LED right there, so that you don't have to muck around and try to figure it out yourself. All you have to do is just, you know, lay some kind of piece of paper that you can print out, lay it on there, mark it out, and cut out the holes for all this stuff. That would be very ideal. But also, there needs to be a way to mount this board down. Right now it's sitting on the reset switch, and if I just push down on it, it'll reset the console, and if it's pushing down on it all the way, it won't boot. But if you could have, I mean, if you got mount holes right here, if you had mating holes down on the circuit board where you could just put standoffs on each side of this board and mount it permanent, that would be excellent. It would be ideal, if you ask me. And lastly, it kind of covers the PPU a little bit right here. The controller port board, covers the PPU. If I were to ever to place my component encoder board in that socket, then it would interfere with this circuit board. Probably not a concern for most people, but it's just something that I happen to notice. The last thing I could think of even to test would be expansion audio. And I've got a ROM set up that is expansion audio only, and we would hear it now if it was working. So it is not set up for expansion audio. Don't know what all that would involve. Maybe just running a trace from, was it pin 51 or 54? I think it was 54 in a front loader and 51 in a top loader, which you had to mod the power pack to work on a top loader. And this one is not modded, I don't think. I don't think I ever put the jumper on this one. No. There'd be a jumper right there. So it's I believe it is an unused pin. I believe it's 54 on a front loader. And you run that over, which in a sense it's stereo. I don't know which port you'd want to put it on, but I'm sure some people are going to want it. Okay, one of the last things I was asked to do for the Super 8s was to test my component board. This is on the version 1.8, and I think this was a 1.1 board. But he wanted me to see if there was a difference between them, and honestly, I don't think I'll be able to show any kind of difference because it's component, you know, and the TV is going to filter out anything. So I'm pretty certain they're both going to look spot on, which is exactly what this one does. It just absolutely perfect. I don't see any interference. I might switch to a different game, like maybe RC Pro-Am or something that shows like a gray background, which I can usually spot jail bars and interference on a lot better. I am using a EverDrive Super 8 at the moment, or EverDrive N8 I should say. I just got it fitted into a case. I haven't made a label for it yet, but I'll move it over to the 1.1 and I guess I'll load up RC Pro-Am here and see if we can see anything. I must have my filing system messed up or something, because I got A through F on US and like A through D on Japan, so I couldn't find an RC Pro-Am. I've got an Excitebike going, which does have a bit of a gray area in here, and I mean, I've seen interference on this before. There's some, I guess, but it's just not, to me it's not even close to a problem. I mean, everything just looks so pixel perfect. Yeah, I guess if you look real close, you can see a little bit of squigglies going on there. You kind of see it in the black and white. I'm just going to assume, I mean, this is still the 1.8, I'm going to assume we're going to see that on the 1.1 too. And, you know, like, jail bars are pretty inherent in the RGB chips, so it's going to be hard to get rid of them anyway. You know, and then you go to, well, what about interference just because, you know, this hodgepodge hookup. So I think it's doing really well, but I think we're going to see about the same results on both of them, so I'll switch it over to the 1.1. By the way, if you were wondering what was sitting down in there, it's just a post-it note to insulate the pins on the bottom of the power switch from the pins on the PPU socket on my board. If I push it all the way down, they do touch, so I was just making sure that that wasn't going to short. Okay, this is quite the hodgepodge here. I'm actually sending AC, or I guess 9-volt DC, into my test top loader, and I've got alligator clips running over to the power inputs on the 1.1 Same CPU, same PPU and encoder board, same component output. And this is the controller board, which is still attached to the 1.8 via the power wires. And I've just got, again, salvaged component legs sticking to the connectors on both boards there, so that I can actually control the EverDrive. And here's the color test. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not even seeing any squiggly. But let me reset that. And find, let's see, Excitebike. Okay, I don't have any audio output of this one. Ooh, that's odd. Yeah. Zero squiggly. So that tells me there is something going on with the power supply, probably, of the 1.8, adding interference. I mean, there's really not much of a power supply going on with the top loader, but that's the main difference between the two boards right now. It's the only difference, other than the layout of the board, I assume. And I also did not play with the clock circuit. That maybe has something to do with it, but usually squiggly stuff like that is usually power related. I don't know, that's interesting. I mean, I don't see anything going on up here. It's just absolutely perfect. I kind of see a jail bar pattern in here while it's moving, but nothing that I can't unsee, really. Really got to look for it. You know, when it's stopped, it's barely there at all. I don't know. Okay, I'm still on the 1.1, and as you can see, I've got it scaled down to 10 nanosecond per horizontal division, 50 millivolt vertical. And there's something going on there, but you know, I mean, when you scale it back, hard to see anything. So let's hook up the 1.8 again and just see if there's a difference here. I don't bother putting the component board in there. I don't think that's going to make a difference. And now, again, I'm throwing DC at it from a cheap Chinese switching converter power supply. Definitely not going to be clean voltage to it anyway. Ugh, I can hardly believe it. I mean, it's so much cleaner. I said we were at 50 millivolt vertical. (20 nanosecond horizontal, 50 millivolt vertical. I can go. It takes some doing to get. I mean, this scope's still very new to me, so. crazy. It looks cleaner. Problem is I'm not, well, I guess I could. Let's see, I think the 1.8 does it have, yeah, there's a DC in right here. I guess I could attempt to power the 1.8 through the top loader and see if that gets rid of it, because it doesn't appear to be. Just about lost everything there. Stupid power strip. Okay. I have to solder in some leads on that DC input there so I can make this happen, so I'll pause this. Okay, so I had to remove the supplied power module in order to feed 5 volts from the top loader directly into the board to power it. This DC input, auxiliary input over here, was for like 9 volt DC. So it's gone, and now it's feeding 5 volts directly into the positive and ground rails from the top loader from the Chinese 9 volt switching power adapter. Still the same chip, encoder, and my little post-it note is back. Same EverDrive. Everything's the same, except that power module is gone now. And I can hardly believe it, but the squiggly is gone. I mean, it is. It's kind of hard to capture this with a video camera, but none of the interference that I've seen previously is there now. It is just dead perfect. So, and I think we hit this exact same issue with the that board that he supplied with the 1.1. I wonder if I still have it around here. Yeah, here it is. This is what came with the board that he sent me the first time. And I'd have to go back and look at the videos again, but I believe I had a similar issue with interference because of that board. So apparently this little board, which is super ideal. I've got it all. I've got all the legs bent up, but they were nice and straight. One of them's missing up here. That is definitely a super ideal solution for power regulation. But if it's going to cause us any kind of interference, then maybe we need to look elsewhere again. So anyway, I think that's about as far as I can go with testing this as it is.